Hey everybody, welcome. Today I'm going to talk about one of the easiest strategies to implement in your classroom, and it is highly effective. It is wonderful for your reluctant readers. It helps them to learn how to chunk what they're reading into more meaningful or bite-sized pieces. It gets everybody actively involved. Your higher level students are thinking critically, but so are your struggling students. They're thinking critically about this. Everybody has time to talk and process what they're learning, and my favorite thing about this is you can use it for multiple reads, and you can be really creative with it. So let's jump right into it. It's called All-Star Line and Strike Through Strikeout. But guys, you absolutely, sorry that A is capitalized, it shouldn't be. You absolutely do not have to call it that, right? If you have kids that are a little more mature age or just mature-wise, you may say, you know what, we're just going to call this highlighting and striking through. That's fine. You know your students. So when should you use this strategy? Well, the great thing is you can use it with any type of reading passage as long as it can be chunked, even if it's just one chunk, like the Gettysburg Address, that's fine. Just the fact that it can be chunked. Usually we're going to use it with things that are chunked more than just one chunk. It's great for difficult or dry readings. I wouldn't go for uber difficult readings, but things that are a little more challenging, and absolutely those things that are dry reads. If you're reading a novel and the kids are kind of getting tired, it's a great time to bop it in there. If it's any type of informational text, the kids are probably going to really enjoy this, and you are too. As I said before, it is one of the very best strategies for rereadings. The kids don't even feel like they're rereading, and we know that there's no better practice for all of our readers, but especially our struggling and reluctant readers. Learning to reread not only builds their reading stamina, but it also builds their sight word vocabulary and their fluency altogether. This is great if you're wanting to explore author's craft or style, especially author style. I use a lot for that. If you're wanting students to gather evidence, like evidence for theme or evidence for a character trait, or if you want them to weigh evidence, like this is good evidence, this is crummy evidence, then this is an awesome strategy for that. So what are you going to need for this strategy? So my favorite part is that you need almost nothing. You need some sort of reading material. It can be paper or electronic. We know that paper is probably best, but sometimes we don't have the ability, right? We have everything electronically, and normally they're tested electronically. So we do want them to also experience electronic text. So either is fine. They need the ability to highlight. So that can be anything. I normally don't pass out highlighters to my students because they just end up highlighting everything they get their hands on. So I just have them underline instead of highlight, and then when they strike through, I teach them to lightly strike through. If they're using a computer, they need to have the ability to highlight and strike through, or highlight with multiple colors is fine as well. If you don't know how to do that, and your kids are online and they're doing things electronically, it's pretty easy just to Google and find out how to do that. So the ability to distinguish between highlights. If you're highlighting in more than one point of view, you'll want to be able to do that as well. And you'll want pre-arranged small groups. So that's really important. How you group your kids is up to you. I'll talk a little bit more about that later because I want to jump into the strategy, and then that'll help you think about how you want to group your students for this. So let's get started. You're going to give your students their reading material, and you're going to model. In other words, you're going to show them exactly how to chunk the reading. If this is the first time you're doing it, talk about what chunking is. Talk about that what good readers normally chunk when they're reading. We do it automatically. We don't think about it. We don't pick up something and think, I'm going to read from here to here and think about it. Our brain just naturally does it, but it's important to teach them that metacognitive strategy of chunking, right? Our strong readers already do it. It's their bag of tricks that they bring with them to everything they read. Our reluctant and struggling readers probably don't chunk at all. They just power through and never stop to think. So talk to them about what chunking is. You model it the first time, maybe the second time, of how things are going to be chunked. Talk to them about that. Bring them into the discussion. How should we chunk this particular text? But eventually start giving it to the small groups. Hey, groups, how do you guys want to plan on chunking this? I normally tell them, like, I want 5 sections or I want 3 sections, and then let them figure out the chunk from there. They normally land on similar areas, which is good. That shows that they kind of understand. You're going to let the students know what they need to highlight. That's up to you. Often the first thing I say is, in this chunked section, I just want you to highlight something that resonates with you. And I like using terms like that, terms that they don't understand. I'll just tell them resonate just means like, oh, it just really it hits you right here, hits you in the heart. This gets me. This I love. I'm going to highlight this one. Or they could be highlighting for something they disagree with, something a character would like or dislike, author style. When you're doing Poe, when you're doing anybody, author style is awesome. As I said before, evidence, if they found strong evidence or if they found poor evidence, they could be highlighting for that. So on and so forth. Literally endless list of what you could do. A character's choices, character's bad choices, character's good choices, the way characters speak, anything like that. You need to think about what you want them to highlight. Usually first, in a chunked section, I want them to get through it the first time, and then I could do a mini lesson and come back on what we're focusing on for that day. So the first time I may say, let's just chunk it up, highlight for something that resonates with you, all right? We get that. The students read silently. Normally, they read silently. I think I put right here, yeah. So, or in pairs or groups. So, guys, I like to have them read silently if possible. But if you have a lot of strugglers, let them read in small groups or let them read in pairs. Or even if they're extreme strugglers, you can start out reading it to them. We want to pull those scaffolds away as time goes on, right? So eventually we want them to read silently. And I would pull that away pretty quickly. This is designed better to say, all right, guys, we're chunking up from here to here. I want you to read there to there. Highlight one thing that resonates with you. And I normally tell them only one thing, so they really dig a little deeper, right? So that's what you would do. So either reading as a whole group, you're going to read it to them, then allow them to silently go highlight, or their small groups would read, then they get quiet and silently go highlight. But that highlighting part, that part where they are picking out what resonates with them, they're doing that silently on their own. They can do it with a pencil, they can do it with a highlighter, they can do it with a pen, whatever works for you. Then, once everybody's done that through the first section, you stop. After each chunk section, you're going to stop, and the students will share what they highlighted. So don't have them read a chunk section, highlight, read a chunk section, highlight. Read a chunk section, highlight, round robin, share in their groups. Tell each other what they highlighted. Very often they're going to highlight things that are similar. Sometimes someone's going to share something that's like off the wall but really interesting. All you're doing at this time, really at any of the time, is just walking around your classroom, right? You're just enjoying and listening. I will tell you guys, and I will probably say this in every video I make, I had to put a box on the board, and I could go up there and write myself notes because I heard so many great things that my students would say in all these strategies where I'm not talking and they're making meaning of their reading. I had to put a box on the board and I would write myself a note so that when we had a better place to stop, I could stop and say, share what you said and share what you said, because my students told me I was interrupting them too much. I got so excited. But anyway, they're in their small groups. They're discussing round robin, what they highlighted, tra-la-la. Once all the groups have shared or come close to everyone sharing, you know how some groups will get a little verbose, we'll stop and say, hey, does anyone want to share with the whole group what you highlighted? Or if you have kids that are reluctant, I've had classes where nobody would share if I offered that way. I'll say, in group 3, share what one person in your group highlighted. Okay, group 7, share what one person in your group highlighted, if you don't have kids that like to share. This is also a terrific time for you to share. So, hey guys, this is what I highlighted here. I thought it was cool. Then you're going to move on to the next chunk section. They're going to highlight and then share. And then the next chunk section, highlight and then share. Now, you don't want to do this with a 4-page essay, but you can do it with a decent sized piece of literature or fiction or nonfiction or whatever works for you, okay? And next, you want to add a little spice, right? The strike through. So for the second or even the third read, students can strike through text, all right? So they can strike through text that they don't like. They can strike through text that from another point of view someone would disagree with. They can strike through poor evidence. Keep in mind, they can also highlight in a different color for another character's point of view or another person's point of view. They could read an essay, say, on uniforms in school. And they could go through first read and they could strike through for things that they disagree with. So that we would chunk it, and guys, strike through things you disagree with, because that's probably how they're going to feel first. And then for the next read, they may underline things that their principal or teachers would agree with. And for the next read, maybe circle things that their parents would say, oh, this stands out to me. So it doesn't matter what order you do things in or anything like that, but notice what happened there. They had 3 reads. But can you imagine the investment that your students have first when they get to say, I do not like this? Then realizing most likely that second read, they're going to have to circle things that they struck through. Remind them not to strike through really darkly, very lightly makes more sense. But to go through the next time, and from their principal's point of view, they've got to underline and like, oh, they like what I dislike. And then finally, from their parents' point of view, it may be similar, it may be different as they go through and circle for that. You can also have them do that in 3 different colors of highlighter. They don't necessarily have to strike out. You can do a green and a yellow and a red, whatever works for you. But notice you've got 3 reads in there and students who are probably highly invested in the read. Their fluency rate is going up. Their critical thinking skills are going through the roof because they're thinking about outside of themselves, all of that wonderful stuff. Does this take a little bit longer? Yeah, absolutely. But guys, keep in mind, all the current research says it's not going through a ton of text. It's going deeply into a few texts. So those rereads are terribly important for all of our kids. Few things to keep in mind. Make sure that you model chunking the text, all right? That, again, our strong readers do it naturally. We do it naturally, but our reluctant readers and our struggling readers, they do not. Model how to highlight. So the first time you do this, the first paragraph that you use or the first chunked area, you go ahead and share what you mean. Now I'll tell you, they catch on really quickly, and I have done this before, maybe without modeling exactly what I wanted them to highlight. It depended on the kids. And you really only have to do that one time, and they get it immediately because, it's not a hard strategy. Use backward design when you're doing this. Think about the why. So my first read that they go through is probably just to get them to read through it. That's the most important thing. I want them to read. But my second read, what is it that I'm teaching right now? Am I teaching character point of view? Am I teaching strong or weak evidence? Am I teaching author's style? What is it that you're teaching and how can you use it here? And you can use it multiple ways, not just the ways I'm talking about, all right? So don't miss those opportunities for multiple reads. First read may be just to get through it, but hey, your kids may find that they don't need the first read just to get through it. You can jump right in with a strategy. You can have them highlight for strong figurative language. You can have them highlight for figurative language that doesn't make sense anymore. I found that to be really important for my kids to understand. The figurative language that made sense 200 years ago in literature doesn't make sense to us today because we don't speak that way or we don't even live that life. So any of those things are fine. A few management tips. Sorry about that. So again, backward design. Why are they doing this? Think about what you're going to have them do at the end. I just have to get rid of that, guys. What are you going to have your kids, what are you going to have your kids do at the very end? Are they going to write a paper? Are they going to create a big poster, under theme? So think about your objectives and the end product that you want to use. You know how to best group your kids. So I'm not going to soapbox here, but I am going to say think about your students. If you have some extremely high-level students in your class, a couple of them, it may be best to let them work together in a small group of 3 or 4 because sometimes they're so far beyond their classmates that they need to be with peers thinking that way. But you can also disperse them throughout. It depends on what you're doing, what your purposes you need. We're all so data-driven now. Are your high-level students moving as well as your struggling students? All of our students deserve to start at point whatever and move a couple points ahead, if not more, right? So if our high-level students in our school aren't moving forward enough, maybe we put them in their own group and let them have a little higher-level discussion. But if your high-level kids aren't through the roof, and they're doing it okay, let's just put them all together, maybe disperse some of those higher level kids out so everybody gets it. But keep in mind, the bulk of this is not on one person. The bulk of this is on every individual group member, which is cool. I don't know if I put this in here, I may have later. Please make sure, guys, that you have your students do some sort of self or peer assessment at the end. And it can be something crazy easy, all right? So self or peer assessment, just a piece of paper that said, rate 1 through 5. How well did I do today? I read the chunk sections. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. I highlighted, or underlined when I was told to. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. I shared with my small group. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. And then just a space for every other group member's name. So they're groups of 4 or 5, so you have 4 or 5 little slots there. How well did these people participate? And they would only know participating in the discussion, right? Let them do that. What a great ticket out the door. They're thinking about their own thinking and their own participation. You can even add, what can I do better next time? But you also get some information back on other groups because you may not have been around to hear everybody. And now you know. You can whip through that really quickly and you've got some great information, some great real-time data for your classroom. So some ideas for this, guys. And again, this is nowhere near an exhaustive list. You can literally use this with any piece of literature, any piece of writing, any piece of text that you want. The Gettysburg Address, it's just one big chunk, but I would have the first read go through for something that resonates with them, what just really resonates. Then as a second read, maybe for thematic statements or sentences, I might have them go through another read based on people from the North and people from the South, perhaps, or from the point of view of a leader in the military, and maybe a mother of someone, a mother who lost someone there. Any of those things are fine, as long as the highlights or the underlines look different so you can distinguish. Keep in mind too, guys, if you want your kids to step it up a bit, have them annotate to the side why they did that. Why did you highlight that? Why did you put that there? A quick annotation so that you can get those turned in and you can really see their thinking there if you didn't hear it. A few pages from any novel, guys. You can do that for character development, right? You can do it for theme. You can do it for, you can do a second read through for another character's point of view. Tons and tons of things there. Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, I've done this with this multiple times. The first read for what resonates, just chunking it up, what resonates with you, what really hits you here. I found with that particular speech, I get the most diverse answers of what resonates from my kids. The second read, I like them to go through and find figurative language, the strongest piece of figurative language that they found, and he uses so much you can find it almost in every chunk section. If you do that, you might want to make sure that you chunk it yourself so that they will find figurative language in each chunk section. Dr. King's Letter from a Birmingham Jail. He's just fresh in my mind right now, so he was a good example for this. First, again, for what resonates. These are kind of difficult pieces for them to read. So that first read for what resonates. The second read, the point of view from someone receiving the letter. That's one of my favorite things to do. So we talk about that letter, when and where he wrote it, and to whom he was writing, who was his audience, and that's, the Southern ministers. So now go from the point of view of, I just received this as a Southern minister, and I'm going to strike through things that I don't think that was appropriate for him to say, or I don't agree with him, or ooh, that makes me mad. And the kids have a really great time with it. And again, think about the level of critical thinking. Poe's Annabel Lee. Have them chunk poetry chunks itself, right? So have them go through the creepiest line in each stanza. There's a creepy line in every stanza because he's just creepy. Second read for author style, his use of dashes, his use of suspense, his use of this, that, or the other. So you can go through and look for author style in that case. There's a million options and a million different ways to use this. I hope that you use it because to me, I think it's the world's easiest one. The kids always already have what they need in front of them, and I can do it on the fly. So guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have further ideas, please let me know. That's my personal email there, and let me know what you think. What do you think about the strategy? Did you try the strategy? How did you use it? How did it go? Again, really simple. I'll just wrap it up one more time. Kids are in small groups. You chunk up the material bit by bit by bit. However you decide to chunk that, you know your purpose for this. The kids read a chunk on their own. Usually it's what we're really hoping for, is that they silently read it on their own if that's possible. So it depends on how struggling your readers are. Silently read it on their own. Highlight or underline something that resonates with them is usually the easy way to do the first read, but not a requirement. Something that stands out to them. They share it in their small group. They go to the next chunk section, highlight or underline something that stands out, share it in their small group, on to the next chunk section. Hopefully there's not more than 4. But then we do a reread. This is so important, those rereads. We can't do anything more important with our kids than reread. And that's where we want to maybe give a mini lesson. Maybe we're giving a mini lesson on figurative language. Maybe we're giving a mini lesson on pose style. Maybe we're giving a mini lesson on character point of view, or maybe we're giving a mini lesson on audience point of view. Any of those things is fine, or any of those things are fine. But then they go through and repeat the process with the different purpose for highlighting or underlining. And all we want to do is make it look different. If your kids are into it, I'll say this two ways. One, if they're a little more advanced and they can absolutely go ahead and do their annotations, do it. Or if they're more reluctant. So I have kids that I had a year where I had a group of kids that they just would not. They say, yeah, we participated, and they didn't. If I didn't get around to them, they weren't talking about what they needed to talk about. So I did have them do the annotations with this. They didn't love doing that, but the more we did it, the better they got at it. And of course, I modeled how to do that first and foremost. So guys, again, let me know what you think. I hope you use this strategy in your classroom. Let me know how it went.